Scales are to music what water is to our planet and to our bodies. Our planet is made up of about 70% of water. 96.5% of that amount is held in our oceans. Our bodies are made up of about 60 to 70% of water. Water is everywhere. Water is in everything. We can't live without water. Likewise, there's no music without scales. Every piece of music that you'll come across in your lifetime is made up of a scale or another. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how you can learn any scale within 10 minutes, one octave on your instrument without making mistakes at 120 BPM. Now, we are going to be focusing on our major scales in this video because your major scales are the most important when it comes to learning scales. And why is that? Because from the major scales, you can make your minors, okay? Make your minor scales. From a major scale, you can make your pentatonic. And all you need to do is to change the quality of the scale, whether you want it to be minor or you want it to be dominant and so on. You can also make your blues scale from a major scale. You can also make your modes, right? Phrygian, Dorian, Mixolydian, and the list goes on and on. And then you can make other exotic scales such as your diminished, augmented scales, and so on. So what you will find is that every scale outside of a major scale is an alteration of a major scale. A minor, which is a relative of C major, is an alteration of C major, okay? What you do is change the root and automatically that change the sequencing of the intervals, thereby making the sound quality of that scale very different. So those are the most important. So when you take up your horn for the first time, one of the long-term goals that you need to have is to work on your sound every day, every week, every month, every year, until the rest of your life, until there's no more breath left in you, at which point you will part ways with your saxophone. However, once you're able to get sound out of your horn, your first goal in the first week of learning to play your saxophone is to learn your fingerings. And there are 20 regular fingerings that you need to learn on your saxophone. The second goal, of course, is to learn your 12 major scales. And all of those are possible because the same amount of time it takes to learn the C major scale without any sharps or flats is the same amount of time it should take you to learn the C sharp major scale, which has 7 sharps. It's just a matter of the method that you choose to use. All right, so there are 20 fingerings you need to learn. So using the circle of fourths and fifths, we have our 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, okay? C, no sharps or flats. G, 1 sharp. D, 2 sharps. A, 3 sharps. E, 4 sharps. B, 5 sharps, F sharp, 6 sharps. Then we have C sharp, which has 7 sharps, okay? And then going around the circle of fourths anti-clockwise, we have F, 1 flat, B flat, 2 flats, E flat, 3 flats, A flat, 4 flats. Then we have D flat, 5 flats, G flat, 6 flats, and then C flat, 7 flats. Okay, so enharmonically, B and C flat are the same, F sharp and G flat are the same. It's the same fingering or fingerings on the horn. C sharp and D flat, they are the exact fingerings. It's just a matter of when music is written, how it's written on a staff so that you're reading sharps or you're reading flats. Also, if you were playing an harp, you would need to learn how to read in C flat versus B major because that's how the harp is tuned. Okay, so you have 20 fingerings to learn, okay? So using our circle of fourths and fifths, we have 3 Cs, 2 Gs, 3 Ds, 2 As, 3 Es, 3 Bs, 2 F sharps. So we're not accounting for altissimo F sharp. We're just accounting for the regular range. Then we have 3 C sharps or D flats. Then we have 2 A flats, 3 E flats, 3 B flats, and we have 3 Fs. Okay? So if you add all of these numbers, you should get to 32. you should get to 32. But we're not using 32 fingerings. We're only using 20. And the reason for that is that when you learn the fingerings of most of these notes right here on your saxophone, they're overlapping by just using the octave key to get to the next octave. So let's take C for example. When you learn low C, low C is different from middle C, right? Which is C2. So once you learn low C and you learn middle C, to get to C3, all you do is add the octave key. So we'll call that 2, okay? G is just 1 because you're just adding the octave key to get to the octave. Palm key D is different from D1 and 2, right? And so we call that 2. A is just adding the octave key to alter that, so that's 1. Palm key E is different from E1 and 2, so we'll call that 2. Low B is different from B2 and 3, so we will call that 2 as well. Then F sharp is just 1 by adding the octave key. Low C sharp, excuse me, or D flat is different from C sharp 2 and 3, so we'll call that 2. Then A flat is just adding the octave key, call that 1. Then palm key E flat is different from E flat 1 and 2, so we'll call that 2. Then low B flat is different from 2 and 3, we'll call that 2 as well. And then palm key F is different from F1 and 2, so we'll call that 2. So 2 and 1, 3 and 2, 5 and 2, 6 and 2, 8 and 2, 10 and 1, 11, 2, 13, 1, 14, 2, 16, 2, 18, 2, 20. So you have a total of 20 fingerings that you need to learn on your horn. And how do you get used to those 20 fingerings? By practicing your scales, okay? Repetition is the mother of mastery, according to Robin Sharma. Now, within the musical world, and I'm specifically talking about saxophone players right now, many or most saxophone players can only play in the top half of the circle of fourths and fifths. So any note, or any scale rather, that has 3 flats and below, or 3 sharps and below, they can comfortably play in those keys. But once you get to 4 flats, or 4 sharps and above, they have a hard time, right? Now, if you are playing your horn beyond a month, 2 months, a year or 2, and you can only play in the top half of the circle of fourths and fifths, then it's one of 2 things. 1, you don't understand the importance of your major scales, or 2, your methodology is just incorrect and it needs some tweaking, right? It's not altogether bad, but you need to tweak it so that you can learn to play all of these major scales, because the same amount of time it takes to learn the F sharp major scale, which has 6 sharps, is the same amount of time it should take you to learn G sharp with 1 sharp, or the same amount of time it takes you to learn F major with 1 flat is the same amount of time it should take you to learn G flat major, which has 6 flats, or F sharp, okay? Whichever you want to think about. So let me show you how you would approach this. Now, one challenge that we also have within the music world, or within the world of learning to play an instrument, is that when you first encounter playing your horn, for example, the first place that a lot of teachers, or most teachers, start is at the theory, okay? So music theory is the grammar of music. Now think about it. That is backward in my thinking. It's backwards. Why? Because when a child is learning to speak, you do not send that child to grammar school in order to speak, do you? Not at first, right? Firstly, the child learns how to say words by muttering, and they mimic and they listen to their parents and guardians and those around them, and then they develop their speech by listening. Then, after they reach a certain point, they're sent to school, and then they start to understand what they're saying from a grammatical perspective, so they can know the difference between is, was, were, him, her, she, and the list goes on and on, okay? The next thing that I like to think about scales is that you should think about your major scales as sight words. There are 220 sight words. And you just know them. You don't need a dictionary to decode them. You just know it, the, and, is, and so on, right? You just know them. So likewise, you don't need to know music theory technically to learn your major scales. All you need to do is to learn the notes in each scale. So let us take 2 difficult scales that a lot of saxophone players cannot play. So alto players, we are going to be learning in the key of B major. So we have B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, okay, G sharp, we have that leading A sharp, then we go back to B, and I am going to add C sharp at the top, and there's a reason for that, okay? So we are going to name the degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? 9. So why do I go up to the 9th degree? I like to teach you scales like that because whenever you are learning scales, when you're connecting your scales, whether you're going around the circle of fourths and fifths or you're connecting them diatonically or chromatically, when you go up to the 9th degree in a given scale, it's easier to transition into another scale. It is more easily resolved, especially when you're using 8th notes or 16th notes, okay? So tenors and soprano players, you're going to play in the key of E major with 4 sharps. So we have E, we have F sharp, we have G sharp, we have a natural A, we have a natural B, we have a C sharp, we have a D sharp. So those are your 4 sharps, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we're going to go back to the root or the octave E, and then we're going to add F sharp at the top. Okay, all right. So just for reference, all you need to know, again, are the notes in the scale, and you need to learn how to count. So I'm just going to use these notes as references, okay? So a whole note, a half note, a quarter note, and an 8th note, okay? Equals 4, equals 2, equals 1, equals a half, okay? We're subdividing, and then we're making some line here. And this one, we are going to call this your beats per minute, okay? Your BPM. Now, when you are learning the scale, you are going to be starting with your whole notes, and each note you're going to play and hold it for 4 counts. So your B or your E, okay, B, then C sharp, 4 counts. And you go all the way to the top and you go back to the root. When you're learning your scales like this, it's very slow, but you're only going to spend 10 minutes, dude, okay? 10 minutes to learn the entire scale, all right? So you're giving your brain enough time to think which note to go to next, and that will help you to make less mistakes. It's more difficult to correct mistakes than to avoid them, in a sense, when it comes to music, okay? It's more difficult to go back and fix your fingerings and fixing those notes. So it's better to go slow at first. And you're going to cycle through, right? 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. So at 60 beats per minute, you are going to play through the entire scale. Then you're going to go to 70, then 80, then 90, then 100, all the way to 120. Once you get to 120, you should be able to comfortably play that scale using half notes at 60 BPM without making mistakes. Good? Then you are going to take your half notes and you're going to do the same. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, and 120. But now, you are going to play each note and you're going to hold each note for 2 counts. So B, C sharp, D sharp, and so on. You cycle all the way to 120. By the time you get to 120, you should be able to comfortably play your scale using quarter notes at 60 BPM without making any mistakes. And you're going to continue the process, right? 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, and then 120, okay? But now, each note is going to land on the beat, okay? So B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, and you reverse the process. Once you get to 120, you should be able to play the scale comfortably using your eighth notes at 60 BPM without making any mistakes. And we are going to do the final cut. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. But now, you're going to be playing two notes on one beat. So on the downbeat, for example, by the time you go 1, you're going to play 1 and, okay? 1 and to complete one beat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so on, because you're subdividing the beats. Yes? And once you get to 120, you should be able to play your scale at 60 BPM using semiquavers or 16 notes at 60 BPM without making any errors at all. Now, one thing that you should notice here is that all through, on the whole notes, you're playing the scale 7 times, half notes 7 times, quarter notes 7 times, and then your eighth notes 7 times. So that gives you a total of playing your scale 28 times in 10 minutes. 28 times. Now, that is important because I was reading somewhere that while Mozart was developing his craft, Leopold would have him play through a passage or a piece of music 10 times error-free before he was able to move on. And what he did was he had 10 beans, okay? And each time Mozart played through the passage or the piece of music correctly, he would pass one bean from one pocket to the next until he reached 10. If he reached number 9 and he made a mistake, he had to start from 1 again and pass them over, right? So I've learned that children below the age of 8, 0 to 8, once they start playing instruments, can play through a passage or a piece of music 3 times without making mistakes, then they can move on. Once they reach like 8 and beyond, they need to play 10 times. And that's how I came up with the idea of the Mozart practice technique, okay? To play one thing 10 times, okay? Or one technique 10 times without making mistakes before moving on. For adults, we need to do it 2 times or more. So 28 is a very good number. So if you find that you are making a lot of mistakes and you can't seem to learn your scales or a technical exercise, then it's one of 2 things. You're either going too fast, which is 1, or you're starting at this level down here. Okay, so most people will start learning their scales using eighth notes. Oh, start slow so that your brain can process and think about it. And going back to these 28 times is that non-English speakers in the world, in the ESL world, a non-English speaker need to see one new word 17 times in various occasions, on various occasions or in various situations in order for that new word to stick. So think about it as an adult. In order to make this stick, you practice in 10 minutes because you're focusing on just the one scale, not a million things, right? So I've made this very easy for you. You can find a drum beat in the description below at the link that I've provided, and it will just skip to the beats for you so that you don't have to change your metronome. And once you're changing from whole to half to quarter to eighth notes, I give you a counting so that your brain can process where to go to next. By the way, I am Kadrian, the Sax Habit Coach. Do remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps. As always, Sax a friend, push play until something happens. Peace.